is the Double Special Master.
Live and direct.
Breakfast with CubCamTV.
Trickstar Radio.
I said it's time for action. Boom, boom, boom selection. Yo, this is MC Fizzy from the Genius Crew. Good morning, peeps. You done know. You're locked in to the one and only sounds of the bad man, KXVU, Trickstar Radio. You done know. You know what time it is already.
That's right, people. Just coming up to around 19 minutes to 9 here. Massive shouts out to man like MC Fizzy representing Genius Crew. We're inside the building for another very enjoyable live album reaction and breakdown. And today we are talking about the brand new project from Falz that goes by the name Bad. Now, we've tried to interweave these live album reviews into the show a little bit more. I love doing them. I love the kind of content we get from them, and I love having a bit more sort of time and depth on these shows to do a bit more sort of a deep dive, more than anything else, into what projects are and what they kind of represent. But yeah, really excited to dive into this one. I'm a big fan of what Falz does as a vocalist, and I really like the direction he's actually gone with this album overall. It's the first full-length project we've heard since Moral Instruction. It's slightly shorter as a project at just 12 tracks, but to be honest with you, I'm not mad at this. I think anything between 12 and 14 is actually a prime length for an album in today's sort of market. And overall, I found the project to be very enjoyable. Expansive vocally, a lot of melodic designs and switch-ups which really dive into the evolution of Falz as a vocalist, which I've really, really enjoyed breaking down. Now, I have got notes in front of me, so I am going to be reading off these, just in case you're wondering why there's so much lengthiness going on with the conversation, but I want to make sure we dive into as much depth as we possibly can. So the best way to describe it is through the introduction, Another Me, which is obviously a really cool approach with smooth, bluesy bass lines on what sounds like an acoustic bass instrumentation below, really pushing the whole track forward with a really cool kind of smoky feel. And I think this is a really cool way to introduce what is going on with this album as a whole, because we immediately hear a much wider vocal range coming from what Falz is doing. Again, really kind of smooth hooks on this one, sing-along verses that instantaneously stick in your head, and it's such a cool way to introduce a new album project. This is a fantastic way to kickstart proceedings, and from here we carry on with the fantastic start by moving into the next one, All Night. Now, this is one of the tracks that we actually saw promoted quite heavily from the album, a serious summer bonanza, bouncing across kind of scuttling drum lines and tidy percussive inputs throughout, with Falz providing another smooth vocal outing with his performance on this one. His versatility, I feel, on this as a project overall is what makes it so interesting. A lot of kind of cool and response stuff going on, scat style pre-bridges, and it gives it a very catchy overall feel. Definitely a tune that I'm going to be spinning here on the show and on DJ sets as well, followed by a fantastic selection after this, but I feel these two tracks that open the project up really do set the tone and kind of set the bar quite high as we move forward. But moving on from this, we then get into a wicked collaboration with Tiwa Savage, who then arrives on Beautiful Sunflower, which immediately strips back the instrumentation in favour of kind of floating pads and bulbous bass pulses, over which Falz comes across extremely comfortable, with another wide vocal display packed with emotion, and Tiwa's vocal also lands in angelic fashion as you would expect, giving the whole track a new dimension, almost kind of Drake-like in its compositional value, which for me is never a bad thing whatsoever. Really, really cool sound on this one. And then following on from that, we see Falz diving back into a much more sort of rhythmically focused approach on Parampe. This one, interlocking gorgeous saxophone toots with sort of tidy chorused vocal overlays and another killer bass line. And you know, with albums, there's always that sort of one tune that kind of slips through the greats, but is kind of your favourite on this album. I definitely think Parampe might be mine. It's got such a cool overall feel to it. Definitely a tune I'm going to be running on a regular basis. We then get into another warm arrangement as the unmistakable vocal lines of Chic arrive in style for an emotional display on Knee Down. These vocals are kind of interwoven with Falz, who gets into his more sort of rapping bag for this one for the first time on the project, at least with an intense feel. It gives a really nice back and forth feel around the subject of relationships and obviously proposing, as you can probably tell from the title, which makes a nice switch up for the project. Definitely works wonders. And the thing I've loved about this album so far up to this point is the overall kind of floaty textures we're feeling in the backdrops. We're hearing it in pads, chords, keys, and they're all giving a very kind of loose feel, with a pull-up then adding more kind of promise to that, with the idea of kind of whirlpools of floating keyboard lines and minimal drum flexes as well. This is a wicked transition into Gentleman, which then kind of ups the pace in dance floor terms, with a wicked piece of production from Young Willis. Always great to hear Young Willis on projects like this. Serious sing-along flavours from Falz on this one, leading the way, again leaning towards an OVO influenced arrangement. I don't know whether that's intentional, but it's definitely something I'm picking up on as the album goes through. Next up, a collaboration that a lot of people are very excited as the enigmatic sounds of the Caveman are introduced to the fold with Woman, combining those fantastic vocals with heavily processed and percussively laden instrumental backings. Falz then arrived shortly after with a blissful tundra of distant saxophone melodies and clicking rhythms for one of the real highlights of this project, in my honest opinion. Tender Love then follows with another vibrant bop of an arrangement, again keeping things minimal and focusing on chorused backing vocals and Falz's heavy vocal melodies throughout, moving in with sort of suave bass lines below and a number of other cool instrumental features. We then check out Inside, which is a pretty flawless collaboration alongside the likes of both Tamaya and Boy Spice. This is the track we've been running on the breakfast playlist for a hot minute. We put together a full reaction for this one on the channel, so do go and check it out. And the fact it's only 2 minutes 15 but packs a serious punch is one of the reasons I do like it so much. Not a second is wasted on this one. Finally then we get into 2 additional collaborations as Falz is joined by LAX, firstly on Roger Miller, a guitar-led arrangement focusing on intricate percussive drives and snare-led pushes, allowing for some serious rap flows to make their way to the forefront. And then of course we get into Ice Cream, which I've already said is one of my highlights from this project overall. Very, very cool sounding arrangement on Ice Cream alongside Benson. So there we go. Overall, I very much enjoyed this as a project. Overall, I was very impressed. There was only 12 tracks, but in my mind there was no filler, which I've actually preferred as an overall approach. And I can't lie to you, I really liked the variation in vocal performance, because I feel Falz sometimes gets put into a little bit of a box of being more of a rap influenced performer. I feel with this one he really showed that he does have that sort of versatility. He has a really kind of wide range with what he does, and I absolutely loved listening to this album start to finish. The collaborations on there are all collaborations that make sense. Nothing's really forced. It's all like kind of projects that definitely feel like they are supposed to be there, and I very much enjoyed that as an overall feel. And then alongside that, Ice Cream being called is kind of last as well, because it kind of gives it this idea that it's a bonus track, because we've already heard it. It's been out for a few months. I kind of like it when all of the tracks that we've already heard are towards the end of a project rather than interwoven, because it means we just get a solid kind of block of new material. But there we go. I very much enjoyed this project, and hopefully you guys have as well. We will be getting into a few more kind of breakdowns for it on CubCamTV, and of course getting into a few more radio plays from the project as well. But there we go. I know this one's been in the works for a while, and I definitely think Falz succeeded in delivering a varied and forward-thinking production on Bad. Very much enjoyed it as an overall album project. So there we go. Right about now, though, we're going to get back into some playlist action. The sounds of Degs on this one. It goes by the name Still Messed Up. Hospital Records Business, just coming up to 11 minutes to 9. Let's go.
This is Breakfast with COVID, bringing you their morning flavours on Trickstar Radio.
Trickstar Radio.